much information out there, and especially with the pandemic going on, why is it so important to prepare, like if, like for this election, like how should we prepare for it?
Sure. I think something that we should all be keeping in mind is that this year there have been an increasing amount of ways to try to prohibit folks from voting. And so we really need to make sure that we have our plan in place and that we won't be stopped. One of the biggest things folks can do is fill out your ballot as soon as you get it instead of waiting until the last minute. You don't want to be in a situation where you're scrambling to find your ballot, you're not sure where you left it, but just making sure to do everything ahead of time, prepare ahead of time. And another great thing is if you have your ballot all turned in ahead of time, you can work with a lot of great campaigns to help text, call, anything like that to help get the word out the day of. And so you can still contribute beyond your own contribution on that day as well.
So preparation is key. I mean, any election, but I feel like with this one, it's just crucial to be prepared and whatnot. Now, do you say, like, is it better to, I know majority of us we're getting mail-in ballots. Do you think it's best to vote in person or by mail? What do you recommend?
Sure, it's of course personal preference. My take is I've actually only ever voted absentee. I always vote by mail. I'm fortunate that I live in California, so that's always been an option for me. But I like to fill out my ballot and just while I'm looking at it, instead of not having it in advance. That way I can reference whatever multiple voter guides while I'm filling it out. But I do like to actually drop off my ballot at a polling place or in a specific ballot box so that it can be done the day of the election and not worry about any potential mail delays, which I know is something we're particularly concerned about this year.
Right. Oh, totally. First off, what's an absentee ballot? Because I did get that question in I did a story asking my followers if they have any questions in regards to this, and I did get some questions asking like what's the difference between an absentee ballot and a mail-in ballot? Or is it the
sure
same?
Yeah, an absentee ballot and a mail-in ballot are the same. Okay. The language around them has been a bit politicized, but essentially it's a ballot that you receive at home or wherever you're registered, and you can fill out and mail in or drop off at a polling place. Some states have different rules around how you would be eligible for an absentee ballot, for example, which is what has led to some confusion. But fortunately, now we're becoming more lax because of the pandemic to be able to allow folks to vote from the safety of their own homes.
Got it. And those that want to submit their ballot at a drop box, how exactly do we find out where those drop boxes are located?
Sure. The drop boxes vary very much by state and region. So the most important thing is to keep track of the information that the Secretary of State for the state you live in is putting out. In most states, you'll be able to get localized information through a site such as lavote.net, for example, in Los Angeles, and through your county registrar.
Yeah, and there's so much information, online. I'm sure Google is great with all the information in regards to all of this, like drop boxes and whatnot. Now so what if, can I go to a different location to cast my vote? How does that work?
Sure, that's a really good question. This will vary a little bit by region, but generally, if you go to a different polling place, you won't be able to cast a standard ballot. You'll either not be able to vote or only be able to cast what's called a provisional ballot, which I can explain. Yeah. However, a lot of areas will have voting centers or places where you can vote early through the county registrar, so that might be an option. If you go to a different polling place and you are able to vote, your ballot will essentially be considered provisional and be more heavily scrutinized. So definitely encourage folks, if they're voting in person, to vote either somewhere that allows people from across the county to vote or their designated polling.
Gotcha. And then speaking about voting in person, I know there's different protocols now and people are worried because of the pandemic. And I do hear conflicting, people are saying, oh, I'm going to vote in person because my mail-in ballot won't count. I want to secure that it's counted for. And some people are like, no, it's too risky with the pandemic going on. So what are like some protocols that are taking place right now with voting in person? Like I did read about, we have to bring our own pen, correct? Just like safety measures and stuff.
Sure. I must admit, I'm not completely up to date on that, but I can speak to my personal pandemic protocol as it's something that I take very seriously. Yeah, I definitely think there are tons of reasons why folks might want to vote in person, and in some states may need to vote in person. So regardless of the reason, if you're going to vote in person, it's important to be prepared. My recommendation would be have a mini hand sanitizer in your pocket or on your keychain, just on your body, making sure you have that. Bringing your own pen, that's great. Whether it's required or not, definitely key. Making sure with your mask, a big thing with masks is that we tend to touch them too much.
Right.
So don't touch your mask while you're in the polling place. Don't touch your face at all until after you sanitize. And then keep your distance as much as possible. Use the best quality mask you have. If you have a surgical mask, for example, that's going to give you a little bit more protection than a cloth mask. And just making sure that you keep your distance from folks as much as you can, and don't touch your face till you're able to sanitize properly.
6 feet, be respectful. We're all there for one reason to vote. Now, speaking of voting, my parents actually, I think it's their first time voting, like mail in. And I know a lot of us, it's like our first time. When is exactly the last, because there's so much information out there, when's the last day to mail in our ballots?
So your ballot just needs to be postmarked by election day.
Okay.
However, I'd encourage your fans to not focus on that and just think of it as soon as possible.
Right.
USPS is definitely encouraging folks to mail in their ballots ahead of time. So the sooner the better. Yeah, I'd say at the very least, at least a week beforehand, just to be safe.
Yeah, this is not the time to procrastinate and wait till the end. We cannot afford that. So I wanted to ask as well, like, how do we find out if we are registered to vote?
Sure. So a great way to find out if you're registered is to go to bit.ly/outvotereg, and there you'll be able to enter your name, your address, your age, and then you'll be able to find out if you're registered or not. So that's a quick and convenient way.
And do you recommend double checking ahead of time just to make sure that we're good to go?
Yes, excellent question. Definitely recommend everybody confirm. Even if you haven't moved recently, it's quick and easy. Another thing I would also confirm or recommend, little plug, is once you check your voter registration, announce it. Tell everyone you checked your registration and announce them to do the same.
Even myself, I'm like telling family and friends, like, did you register yet? Like, are you registered? You have to make sure. I mean, sometimes something may happen, right? You may move and you have to just double check if you are registered. Now, I also wanted to ask, how can I sign up for early voting?
Sure. The best way to do that is to contact your county registrar. Some places you won't need to register for early voting. They'll just have early voting locations that you can go and vote at. So you definitely want to check with your locality about that.
Gotcha. And I just want to revisit, as I was saying earlier, there's like so much information out there, and especially on social media and just websites. How do we know that the website we're checking out, the information is actually reliable and legitimate? Because there's just so much stuff out there with false dates and false claims. So how do we know the source is, it's reliable?
Sure. Very good question. And I would say much trickier this year than ever before. But the safest thing I would say is to just go through your Secretary of State for your state, because that's the standards that will be held. Another thing is just think about a couple organizations that are really trusted that you'd feel comfortable going to. When We All Vote, for example, is a really great national organization that has very trustworthy information. Another one, of course, that folks might be familiar with is vote.org.
Vote.org. That's, yeah, I've definitely made my way through there. I also have been getting questions as well on Instagram. It just came to my mind how people are worried that their mail-in ballots will get lost, or how are they sure that it's going to get counted? So how can we track our mail-in ballots? Is there a way to track it?
Sure. Yeah, it again can vary a little bit by state, but generally the best way is just through whatever your state Secretary of State is. They'll have an ability for you to go and check to see if your ballot has been counted. Most Secretary of States have a specific link where you can check if your ballot has been counted or not. Some states, when you get the receipt, it also has a number, kind of like a barcode. And so that can be a quicker way to check that your ballot has been received as well.
Okay, that's really good to know.